The transmission lasted exactly 3 seconds. Rhett Vaz had sent first contact signals 11 times in his career. He knew the protocol by heart, the precise frequency modulation, the mathematical sequence that any spacefaring civilization could decode, the careful balance of information that said we are intelligent, we are peaceful, we want to talk. He had refined it over 180 years of exploration. He was proud of it. It was, his crew agreed, the finest first contact signal in the Thalori Explorer Corps. He sent it into what his charts showed as unclaimed space, leaned back in his command chair, and waited for the silence that always followed. The silence that could last hours or days before a response came, if one came at all. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then every communication channel on his ship exploded. Not from the planet below, not from the coordinates he had targeted, from everywhere. 47 distinct transmission sources lighting up his board simultaneously, in 47 different languages, from 47 different civilizations that his science officer was frantically cross-referencing against the Thalori database, while her hands shook slightly in a way she probably didn't realize Rhett Vaz could see. He read the messages in order of signal strength. The first one from a species called the Venari said, "You have entered human space. We strongly advise you to respond to their hail with complete transparency. Do not attempt evasive maneuvers. Do not activate weapons systems. Do not scan aggressively. Comply with everything they ask. We speak from experience." The second, from a civilization Rhett Vaz didn't recognize, said only, "May your gods favor you." The third said, "Turn around." The fourth said, "We will pray for you." The fifth said, "Do exactly what they say, exactly. Don't improvise." Rhett Vaz stopped reading after the fifth. He looked at his tactical officer. His tactical officer looked at him. In 180 years of exploration, in 11 first contact situations, he had never received a response like this. He had never received responses from species he hadn't contacted. He had never had the distinct and novel experience of feeling, in the space of 3 seconds, that he had made a serious mistake without yet understanding what the mistake was. "Science," he said carefully, "what do our sensors show?" His science officer pulled up the display. Empty space. The planet below, one small moon. An asteroid field 17,000 kilometers to port. Nothing else. No ships. No stations. No orbital infrastructure of any kind. "Nothing, Commander," she said. "Communications," he said. "The 47 responses, are they from this system?" "No, sir. They're from all over the region. Some of them are coming from 6 light years away. The signal travel time should make that impossible, but Rhett Vaz said. "But they responded within 3 seconds of our transmission," she said, "which means either they anticipated us or—" The hail came in on a frequency his system had never logged before. Clean, clear, unencrypted. A human frequency. And a human voice said, "Thalori vessel. This is Captain Aliner Marsh, United Earth Ship Vigil. You're in human space. You've been in human space for 6 hours. Please respond on this channel. I've been waiting for you to send that signal." The bridge went completely silent. Rhett Vaz looked at his sensor display. Still nothing. No ship. No drive signature. No weapons lock. No presence of any kind except that voice, calm, unhurried, slightly raspy, carrying the particular quality of someone who had been doing their job for a very long time and found it neither exciting nor burdensome, simply the thing they did. He looked at Ambassador Sarek, his young diplomatic attaché, standing at the back of the bridge with an expression that Rhett Vaz had not seen on Sarek's face before. Something between professional alarm and personal fear, carefully managed, not quite succeeding. Rhett Vaz opened the channel. "Captain Marsh," he said, "I am Commander Rhett Vaz of the Thalori Explorer Corps. We were not aware this region was claimed." "I know," Marsh said. "Our charts show—" "I know what your charts show," she said. "They're wrong, have been for a while." A brief pause. "Commander, I'd like to suggest you hold your current position and we have a conversation. There are some things you need to understand about where you are. Rhett Vaz looked at his sensor display one more time. Nothing, still nothing. Captain, he said, where is your vessel? A pause that lasted exactly long enough to be intentional. Close, Marsh said. She appeared 9 minutes later. Not from a direction his sensors had flagged. Not decelerating from a transit vector his instruments had tracked. The UES Vigil simply materialized on his display, 300 meters off his port bow, close enough that his crew could see her on direct visual without magnification. A mid-sized vessel, dark-hulled, utilitarian in a way that suggested function over ceremony, carrying the marks of long service the way a working tool carries marks, not damage, just evidence of use. She was not impressive. That was the first thing Rhett Vaz noted with something adjacent to relief. He had been bracing himself for something enormous, something that matched the weight of those 47 warning transmissions, and instead he was looking at a patrol vessel that was, by Thalori standards, modest. Then his weapons officer said, very quietly, "Commander, her drive signature." "What about it?" "I'm reading it now that she's visible. It doesn't match anything in our database. The energy output is wrong. The frequency is wrong. I can't classify her drive system." "Meaning?" "Meaning I don't know how she moves," his weapons officer said. "And I don't know how she was 300 meters away for 9 minutes without us detecting her." Rhett Vaz filed that information carefully and said nothing. The visual channel opened. Alina Marsh appeared on his display, and she looked exactly like her voice. A woman in her early 60s, gray-haired, wearing a uniform that was clean but clearly lived in, with the face of someone who had spent decades making decisions in rooms where the stakes were high, and had made peace with that a long time ago. She was holding a cup of something dark and hot, and she was looking at Rhett Vaz with the calm, assessing attention of someone who already knew everything important about him and was simply confirming details. "Commander," she said. "Captain," he said, "I want to begin by assuring you that our presence here was not deliberate. We had no knowledge that this region was." "I believe you," she said simply. "You wouldn't have sent a standard first contact signal if you knew. Standard first contact signals are transparent. You'd have come in dark." She sipped whatever was in the cup. "The fact that you sent one tells me everything I need to know about your intentions." Rhett Vaz absorbed this. "You have been watching us." 6 hours, she confirmed. "Since you dropped out of FTL at the edge of the corridor, we tracked you the whole time." "We detected nothing." "No," she said, "you wouldn't." The particular flatness of that statement, not boastful, not threatening, just factual, settled over the bridge of Rhett Vaz's ship like a change in air pressure. His crew felt it. He felt it. The sensation of a conversation in which the other party knew considerably more than you did and was choosing, carefully, how much of that knowledge to share and in what order. "Captain Marsh," Rhett Vaz said, "the messages I received, 47 civilizations, responding within seconds of my transmission. They warned me. Several of them seemed afraid." Marsh's expression didn't change. "Some of them have reasons to be cautious," she said. "History. History with humanity. History in general," she said. "Some of it involving us, some of it not." She set down her cup. "Commander, I'd like to invite you to a direct meeting. Neutral point halfway between our vessels. Just the two of us, no weapons, no tricks. I'll explain what I can." She paused. "There are things you need to understand about this region of space before you file your report. Things that will save your civilization a significant amount of difficulty." Sarek appeared at Rhett Vaz's shoulder, leaning forward slightly. "Commander," he said quietly, "I advise caution. We know nothing about." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Rhett Vaz told Marsh. The neutral point was a small Thalori shuttle, matched velocity, with a human equivalent that was smaller and plainer. They docked nose to nose, and Rhett Vaz came through the connection corridor to find Marsh already seated, her cup of dark liquid in front of her, a second seat empty across the small table. He sat. She looked at him the way she had looked at him on the screen, assessing, calm. genuinely attentive without being warm. "Thalari," she said, "I've read your species entry in the Galactic Registry. 4,000 years spacefaring, 12 systems under your governance. You've made 11 previous first contacts." She paused. "You're experienced." "I am," Rutvuz said. "Good," she said. "That means I don't have to be gentle about what I'm going to tell you." He straightened slightly. "Please." "This region," Marsh said, "the Vega Corridor and everything within approximately 3,000 light-years of it, humanity has been here for 200 years. Not passing through. Present. Infrastructure monitoring stations, patrol routes, colony systems, research installations. We don't advertise it because we don't need to advertise it. The region is ours in the way your home is yours, not because you post signs on the door but because you live there." Rutvuz had prepared himself for this. He had prepared the diplomatic response, the careful language about territorial claims and galactic law and the registry of recognized space. He opened his mouth. Marsh held up one finger. He closed his mouth. "Your 12 governed systems," she said. "I want to show you something." She placed a small device on the table and activated it. A holographic map appeared, the Thalari's own stellar cartography, their 12 systems marked in blue, and around those systems, overlaid in a dim gold that spread in every direction like morning light, human space, not just nearby, surrounding. 3 of the Thalari's 12 systems sat inside the boundary of that gold like islands in a sea. Rutvuz stared at the map. "You've been our neighbors for 200 years, Marsh said. "You didn't know, that's not an accident." "You concealed it," Rutvuz said. "We didn't advertise it," she said. "There's a difference, Commander. We weren't hiding from you. We were simply going about our business. We don't need you to know we're here for us to be here." Rutvuz looked at the map for a long moment. At the gold pressing up against 3 of his civilization systems. 3 systems that his people had governed for centuries, that their military had defended, that their children were born in, surrounded without knowing it by a civilization they had no record of. "How," he said, "how is there no record? The Galactic Registry." "The registry lists what species choose to register," Marsh said. "We chose not to register this region. We registered our home system, Earth, Mars, the inner colonies. The registry shows what we showed it." She paused. "Nobody audits the registry, Commander. Everyone assumes everyone else is filing accurately. It's a reasonable assumption." A brief pause. "Usually." This is a significant omission," Rutvuz said carefully. "It is," Marsh agreed without apology. "Why?" She was quiet for a moment, not constructing a diplomatic answer, actually thinking, he realized, actually deciding how honest to be. "Early history," she said finally. "Before your time in this region, before most current civilizations had presence here, we had encounters, species that found humanity and made decisions based on what they saw. A single planet, a young spacefaring civilization, what looked like easy prey." Her voice stayed flat. "They were wrong, but being right about that cost us. It cost us a great deal." She looked at him steadily. "So we learned. We stopped announcing ourselves. We grew in the quiet. And by the time it would have been natural to announce our full presence, it was no longer necessary." Rutvuz held her gaze. "Because you were already here." "Because we were already everywhere," Marsh said. Back aboard his ship, Rutvuz sat in his command chair and processed. Saruk was at the secondary console, running queries through every accessible galactic database, neutral observer records, trade registries, species interaction logs. He had been quiet since Rutvuz returned from the meeting. A focused, slightly pale quiet that Rutvuz recognized as the quiet of a young diplomat who had encountered something his training had not prepared him for. "What have you found?" Rutvuz asked. Saruk didn't look up immediately. When he did, his expression had settled into something controlled and careful. "I've been cross-referencing humanity's name against neutral observer records," he said. "Conflict records. There are more than I expected." "How many conflicts?" 14 recorded engagements since humanity achieved interstellar capability," Saruk said. "All of them initiated by the other party." He paused. All of them ended by humanity. Rutvuz said nothing. The most recent was 11 years ago, Saruk continued. A species called the Verka. They had significant military capability, 4 times humanity's recorded fleet size at the time. They made a territorial claim that overlapped with human colony systems. When humanity declined to withdraw, they attacked. He stopped. How long did the war last? Rutvuz asked. Saruk looked at his display. 9 days, he said. The bridge was quiet. 9 days, Rutvuz repeated. The Verka fleet was neutralized in 4 engagements spread across 9 days, Saruk said. No human colony was taken. No human vessel was lost after the first engagement. The Verka surrendered on the 9th day and ceded all territorial claims. He paused. The neutral observer record notes that the Verka High Command described the experience afterward using a single word. It appears in their official record. What word? Rutvuz asked. Saruk looked at him. Inevitable, he said. They said the defeat felt inevitable. From the first engagement, that fighting humanity felt like the outcome was already decided, and they were simply living through the time it took to confirm it. Rutvuz sat with that word for a long moment. Inevitable. He had fought battles in his career. He had commanded vessels in 3 Thalari military engagements before moving to the Explorer Corps. He knew what it felt like when a battle turned, the specific shift in momentum, when you understood that the other side had something you didn't have and couldn't match. He had felt that shift twice, and had the intelligence and the humility to recognize it and adjust. He tried to imagine feeling that shift from the very first exchange, from the first moment of contact. Tried to imagine fighting a civilization where the defeat felt built into the situation from the beginning, where every tactical decision you made seemed to feed into an outcome that was already written. He couldn't quite build the image, but the effort of trying told him something important. Saruk, he said. Commander. The 14 conflicts, Rutvuz said, all initiated by the other party, all ended by humanity, any pattern in the type of species that initiated. Saruk checked his data. Larger civilizations, he said, older mostly, more established, higher military capability than humanity's publicly known assets at the time of each conflict. He paused. In every case, the attacking species made an assessment of human military capability based on available intelligence and concluded they had a significant advantage. And we're wrong, Rutvuz said. And we're wrong, Saruk confirmed. In every case, humanity deployed capabilities in the conflict that had not appeared in any pre-conflict intelligence assessment, assets that didn't exist in any database, every single time. He looked at his display. The neutral observers noted this pattern after the 3rd conflict. Their analysis concluded that humanity had a consistent practice of strategic concealment, of maintaining capabilities that were never made public until they were needed. Rutvuz looked at the sensor display. At the UES Vigil sitting 300 meters off his port bow, modest and plain, and somehow the most complicated thing he had ever tried to understand. Of showing less than they have, he said. Always significantly less, Saruk said. Rutvuz thought about the 47 warning transmissions. He thought about the species that had said, "May your gods favor you." He thought about the species that had simply said, "Turn around." Not because humanity was aggressive, not because it was cruel or conquering, but because those 47 civilizations had enough history, enough proximity, enough accumulated understanding to know what Rutvuz was standing next to without fully understanding it yet. He opened the channel to Marsh. She appeared immediately, as though she had been waiting. "Captain," he said, "I have a question." "Go ahead," she said. "The Verka conflict," he said. 11 years ago, 4 times your recorded fleet size, 9 days. Marsh's expression didn't change. "How?" he said. "Not tactically. I understand the tactics may have been superior. But how does a civilization that large, that established, lose a war in 9 days? What did you do?" Marsh was quiet for a moment. Then she said, We showed them what we had. What you had that they didn't know about. What we had that they didn't know about, she confirmed. They built their war plan on their intelligence assessment of our capabilities. Their assessment was incomplete. A pause. It's always incomplete. Because you always have more than you show. Because we never show everything, Marsh said. We show enough. We show what serves the current situation. The rest we keep. Rhett Vaz looked at her through the display. How much more do you have, he asked. Than what you've shown us today, this conversation, your vessel, the 12 ships that appeared when my officer sent the scan pulse. Marsh picked up her cup, took a slow sip. Commander, she said, that's not really a question I can answer. Can't or won't. She almost smiled. Both, she said. There was a moment in the meeting, late, after the tactical history, after the maps, after the long, careful exchange of information that Marsh had offered in precise measured doses, when the conversation shifted into something different, something quieter. Rhett Vaz had asked why. Not strategically why, he understood the strategy. He meant why in the larger sense. Why, with this much capability, with this much presence, with 200 years of established power in this region, why did humanity stay quiet? Why not announce it? Why not take the seat of dominance that was clearly available to them? Marsh was quiet for longer than usual. Then she said, "Do you know what it costs to fight a war?" "I have some idea," Rhett Vaz said. "No," she said, not unkindly. "You have an idea of the strategic cost, the material cost, ships and resources and time. I'm talking about the other cost." She reached into her jacket and placed a small, flat device on the table, activated it. A name appeared, then another, then dozens, then hundreds cascading across the small display in neat rows, white text on dark background, filling the screen completely and continuing to fill it. "Every human vessel carries this," Marsh said. "The names of our dead, not the wars, the people. Every person humanity has lost in every conflict since we reached the stars. Their names, their ages, their home cities." She looked at the display. "This is just from my vessel. The Vigil has been in service for 22 years. We've been in 2 engagements." She paused. 2 engagements, 22 years, and there are 412 names on this list. Rhett Vaz looked at the names. 412, from 2 engagements, on 1 patrol vessel. "We don't fight wars because we want to," Marsh said. "We fight them because sometimes there's no other choice. And when we fight them completely with everything we have until they're over. And then we carry the names." She deactivated the display, put it away. "We stay quiet because loud civilizations attract the kind of attention that adds names to lists. We've had enough names." Rhett Vaz sat with that for a long moment. "You said the region is yours," he said carefully. "The Vega Corridor, everything within 3,000 light years. That is an extraordinary claim." "It's not a claim," Marsh said. "A claim is something you make and others dispute. This is just where we are, where we've been." She looked at him levelly. "Your 12 systems exist peacefully within that space because humanity had no quarrel with your civilization. We still don't. What you do in your systems is your business, but the corridor is ours. Not because we're aggressive, because we're here. We were here before you had ships that could reach this region. We'll be here after anything that happens today." It wasn't a threat. That was the remarkable thing. It wasn't a threat at all. It was a statement of fact delivered with the same affect as a weather report. The sun rises. The stars are old. Humanity is here. "What do you want from us?" Rhett Vaz asked. "Today, this conversation, what is the outcome you're seeking?" "I want you to go home," Marsh said. "I want you to tell your high command exactly what I've told you, accurately and completely. And I want them to make decisions based on accurate information rather than the incomplete picture that's in your database." She paused. "Incomplete pictures have historically led to very bad decisions where humanity is concerned. I'd like to spare your people that experience." "And if our high command decides the corridor is worth contesting?" Rhett Vaz asked. He had to ask it. It was the question underneath every other question. Marsh looked at him. "Then they'll make that decision with full information," she said. and everything that follows will be on them. The way she said it, still flat, still calm, completely without drama, was the most frightening thing Rhett Vaz had heard in 180 years. He returned to his ship. The first thing he did was pull up the regional scan his science team had been compiling during his absence. The full picture of the Vega corridor, not the surface reading, not the first pass, but the deep analysis his people had been building for the last 3 hours while he talked to Marsh. He looked at it for a long time. The infrastructure was everywhere. His science officer had been right to look pale. Buried in the asteroid fields, tucked into the thermal shadows of gas giants, riding the gravity wells of dead stars, human installations, human monitoring stations, human presence, distributed across 3,000 light-years of space with a density and consistency that spoke not of a military presence, but of a civilization that simply lived here, that had always lived here, that had grown into this space the way roots grow through soil, quietly, completely, without announcement, filling every available space until the soil itself was part of them. 12 cloaked vessels had appeared when his officer sent a scan pulse. 12 visible vessels. He thought about the 14 conflicts, about every attacking species discovering capabilities that hadn't appeared in any pre-conflict intelligence assessment. He looked at the scan and understood with a cold and absolute clarity that what his sensors were showing him was not everything that was here. Couldn't be. What his sensors showed him was what humanity allowed his sensors to see. He thought, what is in the spaces I can't see? He did not try to answer the question. Some questions, he had learned in 180 years, were more useful as questions than as investigations. He called his bridge crew together. They stood in a semicircle, and they were all watching him with the particular attentiveness of people who had spent a strange 6 hours, and were ready for someone to tell them what it meant. "We are going home," Rhett Vaz said. "We are going to file a complete and accurate report. We are going to recommend, formally and in the strongest possible terms, that the Thalori High Command open official diplomatic communication with humanity through proper channels, and that we make no territorial assertions in this region or any adjacent region pending a full review of our galactic maps." He looked at them. Questions. His second-in-command, a young officer named Verk who had the particular confidence of someone who had not yet been surprised by enough things, said, "Commander, with respect, we came here on a first contact mission. Our mandate includes preliminary assessment of territorial opportunity. The corridor is rich in." "Verk," Rhett Vaz said. "Sorry. Did you read the HFY file?" A pause. "I saw the summary." "Read the full file," Rhett Vaz said. "Tonight, every page. When you're done, if you still have questions about why we're going home, come and find me." He turned back to the navigation console. "Set course for Thalori Prime, best speed." He hailed Marsh before they left. She appeared on the display, and he had the sense, looking at her, that she had known he would call, that she had been waiting for it with the same patient certainty with which she had been waiting for his first contact signal 6 hours ago. "Commander," she said. "We're leaving," he said. She nodded. "Good decision." "Captain," he said, "I want to say something." "Go ahead." "In 180 years," Rhett Vaz said, "I have made first contact with 11 civilizations. I have always come away from those contacts believing I understood, at minimum, the basic shape of what I had found, the scale of it, the nature of it." He paused. "I don't have that today. I have spoken with you for 3 hours, and I have reviewed your history, and I have looked at your infrastructure, and I genuinely do not have a clear picture of what humanity is, of your actual scale, of your actual capability." He looked at her steadily. "I find that deeply unusual." "I imagine you do," Marsh said. "Is that intentional?" he asked. The incompleteness. "Is it a deliberate feature of how you present yourselves?" Marsh thought about this for a moment. "When you look at the ocean," she said, "you see the surface, the waves, the color of the water, maybe some distance down if the water is clear. You don't see the bottom, you don't see what lives in the deep. That's not the ocean hiding from you, that's just how oceans work. They're bigger than what you can see from where you're standing. She picked up her cup. We're not hiding, Commander. We're just bigger than your vantage point. Ret Vaz sat with that for a moment. You're dead, he said. The name's on every vessel. On every vessel, she confirmed. Why, he asked. Not strategically. Why does it matter to carry them? Marsh looked at him, and for the first time in their conversation, something moved in her expression that was not calculation or assessment. Something older and more personal, briefly visible before it was managed back into the professional calm. Because they were real, she said. Because they had names and ages and home cities and people who loved them. Because wars have a way of becoming abstract numbers, statistics, strategic outcomes. Carrying the names keeps it from becoming abstract. She paused. We fight when we have to. We always will. But we carry the names so we never pretend it costs nothing. Ret Vaz looked at her for a long moment. Your civilization, he said finally, is not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, he said honestly. Something louder, something that matched the weight of what I've learned today. You are, by any measure I can apply, the most significant power in this region of the galaxy, possibly beyond it. And yet, he gestured slightly at the modest patrol vessel on his display. You send one ship, you come to the meeting alone, you speak quietly, you carry names. Marsh looked at him for a long moment. Commander, she said, loud things are loud because they want to be seen. They want you thinking about what they're showing you. She paused. We'd rather you didn't know where to look. Ret Vaz felt it then, the full weight of it. Not fear. Something more comprehensive. The sensation of a man who has been standing in a room for hours and has just realized that the walls are not walls at all, that what he thought was the boundary of the space he occupied is actually a threshold, and beyond it in every direction, farther than he can see, something immense and patient and thoroughly present has been watching him the whole time. The 12 vessels that appeared when my officer scanned, he said. Yes, Marsh said. Were there more that didn't appear? Marsh said nothing. The silence lasted exactly long enough to answer the question. Ret Vaz nodded slowly. Thank you, Captain, he said, for your honesty. Thank you for listening, she said. A lot of commanders don't. The ones who didn't, Ret Vaz said. They're the ones in your conflict records. Yes, Marsh said simply, they are. The Thalori vessel went to FTL 17 minutes later. Ret Vaz watched the stars stretch and compress through the viewport and thought about oceans, about surfaces and depths, about the difference between what you could see and what was actually there. His report to Thalori High Command took him 4 hours to write and was the most carefully worded document of his career. He wrote it 3 times before he was satisfied. Not because the facts were complicated, the facts were straightforward, but because he understood that the people who would read it had not been in that meeting, had not looked at the maps, had not seen the names cascade across a small screen on a modest patrol vessel. He needed them to understand not just what he had found but what it meant, and meaning was harder to transmit than data. He titled it, First Contact Report Vega Corridor Recommendation, Full Diplomatic Engagement, No Military Assessment. The summary read, We have encountered a civilization of extraordinary scale and capability that has been present in this region for 2 centuries without our knowledge. They are not aggressive. They are not expansionist in the traditional sense. They are simply present thoroughly, completely, invisibly present in a way that makes territorial assessment meaningless. They carry their dead on every vessel so they never forget what conflict costs. They have never lost a war. I recommend we ensure they never have reason to consider us a threat. This is not strategic caution. This is the plainest wisdom I have acquired in 180 years of service. He filed it and sat back and looked at the stars streaming past the viewport. Somewhere behind them, in the Vega corridor, the UES Vigil resumed her patrol. Eleanor Marsh poured herself another cup of terrible coffee and watched the stars with the patient attention of someone who had been doing this a long time and expected to be doing it for a long time more. Around her, in every direction, in the asteroid fields and the gravity wells, and the thermal shadows of dead stars. In the spaces between the spaces that Rhett Vaz's sensors had never reached, humanity watched. It had always been watching. It would always watch. Not because it was afraid, not because it was hungry, because this was home, every light year of it, every cold and silent cubic kilometer of it, earned not with conquest but with presence, with 200 years of quiet, patient, unannounced living in the deep. The stars were very old. Humanity was patient. Both of those things, Eleanor Marsh had always thought, were simply facts about the universe. She drank her coffee. The vigil moved on through the dark.